Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol, who's back in Virginia.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, champs, chumps.
Chumps.
Champs. But
Yeah.
we're for this purpose, we're chumps and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, you've got that kind of Astros mentality in the brain, looking for another championship.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking good too. I got to see them play once. They beat the Yankees. It was great.
At,
They've
le- at
now
least,
won
at
in
least if they
9
win,
in a
it'll be
row.
legitimate.
Huh?
At least if they win this one, it'll be legitimate.
Yeah. They're they're looking pretty legit, and they really are. And
Oh,
they,
no, it's amazing. No, I mean, yeah, it's like the Astros
one,
and the Yankees. The Astros are pretty darn hot right now, so
yeah,
watch out.
that's right. We played. So the game we saw was the last of 9 straight games the Astros played against the 2 New York teams, and 6 of the games were in New York, and we won 7 of those 9 games, including a no-hitter against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good, pretty good run we're on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that with the Astros, anything that they do necessarily is all that surprising. They're a really good team. The
Yep.
Yankees have been probably a big surprise in a lot of ways because they have some good players, but the pitching has been above expectations.
Yep.
But there's still half a year to go, half a season to go, and whether or not they can last that. Whereas the Astros, I mean, McCullers is coming back, right? So
Right.
you get another ace like that in there, and boy, you begin to wonder. I mean, Alvarez has got they're playing great now. I mean, they're just all the way around.
And Orioles are this is the best Orioles team halfway through the season since like 2013 or something.
Yeah,
they're doing well. That's a good season for them. So
yeah. Look, I mean, even if they come anywhere close to 500, I mean, look, if they win 47 to 48% of the games during the year, if they get to that 75 plus range, that's a huge success for them. I think Brandon Hyde deserves at least a few votes for AL Manager of the Year for that performance.
I do too.
And
all that. Elias, the TJ guy who runs the team, he's doing a good job. They're drafting well. They obviously had some early draft picks because they've been really bad, but they've done a good job at getting people who made it up through their farm system and are contributing at the major league level now.
Yeah, I will say that the Orioles are getting better despite the ownership.
That's right.
So I think that the Nationals need to look at that. Nationals, I think, are in that state of flux. I mean, they're going to sell the team, and we don't know who's going to own the team, and some other things. But they need to get some good draft picks and build that team around. But I don't know if they're going to hold on to Soto either. So
right, maybe better if they don't at this point.
I mean, they could get a big haul for him.
Yeah, and that's and they're not going to win as they are with him, right?
Right. They're still quite a ways away from getting back to any.
Not unless he can learn to pitch,
Yeah, I mean, to think that Nelson Cruz is actually trade, material for the trade deadline is like at his age. But hey, the Nationals don't have a lot to offer at this point, and if they can rebuild for the future. But boy, I don't know. I mean, you're a baseball fanatic. The fall from World Series champion to where they are now has been pretty precipitous.
Yeah, I think it's one thing about the Nationals is they've really not been able to maintain success. They've had some good years. They won a World Series. Painful for me personally, but when the big year ends, like there's a huge fall off. They've not been able to stay on the top. It's like they put it together for 1 year, and the organization's just not really deep. I mean, it could be you can talk about ownership or whatever. But they've made some picks, some player decisions that did not work out.
Right, and I do think that they did somewhat mortgage the future. I mean, they really kind of drained their farm system and left the cupboard pretty bare. So now you get to this point where you got people like Rendon and all these other Harper over the years that decide to go to other teams and sign bigger contracts. They didn't have anybody to fill in. I mean, the whole Carter Keyboom thing was a complete bust. They kept trying and just wasn't working. So they didn't have ready-made people to fill in for these things. You trade away Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. Their pitching staff is pretty abysmal. So
right, we let Carlos Correa go. Jeremy Pena is a solid Rookie of the Year candidate. that's the difference in those things. You got to have that person to come in.
So, Bob, I hope you enjoyed the baseball commentary at the beginning. we're right into Brian's wheelhouse for sure. All right. So, the actual news portion. So we're just coming off here this July 4th holiday on Monday. Lots of stuff going on. I mean, July 4th, Independence Day, it's a great day to celebrate the birth of a nation and all of these things. The parades are coming back. All of these things are happening. Unfortunately, it was, marred this time around by the shooting in Chicago, and there's some other things that are going on around there. But you have that in conjunction with still the aftermath of Roe v. Wade, with these liberals and just the pounding, the whining, where's our freedom? I question, what are we doing here anymore? Yada, yada, yada. I mean, what in the heck is going on here?
Well, they're used to winning, and they're used to winning in ways that are not sustainable, right? So they've been told for decades not to rely on Roe, right? That you need to go out and change hearts and minds and get this encoded at the state level, right? And, make sure, win those battles, right? And they didn't do it. Like, hey, we got a court ruling. We'll just shove that down their throat whenever this comes up. And like even RBG was saying, these things are, this is not sustainable. This is not going to keep working. And you better come up with some other plan to make this happen. And they didn't do it. They never listened. And, it fell. And the opinion is not really debatable, and it's not really controversial. What's controversial is, people don't like, when the truth smacks them in the face, right? But the abortion's not illegal. It's illegal some places, but legal others. There are debates to follow on debates to come on this. Someone wrote the other day, they don't think it's sustainable for states to completely ban abortion. I think it will eventually get to something where it's a, real low, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, something like that. But that states will have to accommodate that. I don't know if that's true. I think it's, whether an industry stands or not. I think a lot of states are going to be able to comfortably stay in that range. I know Louisiana, the Democrat governor signed 2 bills immediately after it to ensure that there are no abortions in Louisiana. They got an injunction against one, but I think that got thrown out yesterday or the day before. So those clinics, the 2 clinics left in Louisiana, one of which is in Shreveport, will have to close.
Yeah, the thing is that, for me, when I see these comments, whether or not they're tweets or whatever, by these liberals about, now trying to use July 4th at the end, kind of with this decision, just like, this is so terrible.
America's not working for us. It's not, they're not responsive. They're not changing with the times. It's like the whole point of this is that the rules don't change with the times, right? And if we really need to change a rule, like we did with slavery, we can do it, right? We have the moral authority to do it. But most of the time, the rules work pretty darn well. Those guys did a very good job of putting together the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, setting us on a firm foundation, right? It went against them on this. The courts have been pro-liberal stance on a lot of stuff for a long time. And it's finally gotten to the point where people are actually going back to reading the Constitution and reading the applicable laws before they write the decisions. They're not in search of an outcome. So, you're going to get that. And, they're talking about, I guess Justice Thomas and others have talked about, it leaves some other things that got built on this privacy, right to privacy, unenumerated right, in these decisions. And so all those things are in jeopardy. And interracial marriage is in that, gay marriage is in that, contraceptives are in that. Now, if all those things were ruled unconstitutional today, if all the laws supporting gay marriage and all that were thrown out today, okay, what would happen? Okay, the court doesn't say you can't have gay marriage. It would say, you got to go win the hearts and minds, right? And would they? Yeah. Would it, is there a state in the union where you can pass a law against contraceptives right now? No, there's not. Not that I know of, right? And it would be dumb to try. And it would be, if the Democrats would stop and think about this, it would put Republicans on the spot, because they would have, it's our caucus who's going to be asking for stuff like that, right? And we would be the ones who have to tamp them down and keep them in line.
Yeah. No, I mean, I try to, go back to, when 48 years ago, Roe v. Wade. So, granted, I was about 15 years old at the time, but I don't recall, the same type of reaction then as we do, from the conservative pro-life side as we're getting from the liberal pro-choice side. I mean, what they did, I think, which goes to part of your earlier point, is just that they began to work. It became,
Right.
I mean, this was a decades-long process in the end,
Right.
but they worked to change. They
marched in the cold every year, organized stuff, built a whole media ecosystem around this, right? Put up the money, got the people elected. I remember going to I used to go to the Grover Norquist weekly meeting, right? The Wednesday meeting,
right?
And he would say, where are you on guns, babies, and taxes, right? So those got to be the big three issues. And it's right. It's like they target right wing funding, this and that and the other, the NRA, this and the other. Those things come to you after you say, I'm on the right side of guns, babies, and taxes, right? If you don't come to the table agreeing with those stances, you're not going to get funded or supported by conservatives, and you shouldn't. These are our things we want. We have maintained focus on these things, right? They have gone over all this because they didn't have to build support, right? The courts handed them their victory, so they didn't go do the hard work. They were the squirrels who didn't put up their nuts for the winter, right? They just ran around having fun. So the people who did the hard work beat them, right? They beat them in a policy battle. And what happened here is that the will of the people did get expressed, right? The way people want the country run did get expressed. Even if on this issue, you could possibly find polling that says less than half, but the people who work through the process, and everybody knows the rules of the process. Democrats know what they have to do if they want to change this back, right? We worked through the rules and we won. And we won because we are right on the law. We weren't right on the law. It wouldn't matter how hard we worked or how long we persevered.
Right. So what about part of their reaction, the things that seem to be bubbling back up again now are the filibuster, right? Particularly relating to this, and also the potential of court packing, if they can gain total control of the Senate. Thoughts?
Well, thankfully you have two senators who are not going to let them get away with that. They only have to hold out for the last 6 months of this year, because the next Congress is obviously not going to be talking about court packing and so forth. And Mitch McConnell will be in charge of the Senate again, and so forth. Right. So, it's only 6 more months, Manchin and Sinema, but so far they've done a very good job of saying no to this. And they do so. It's wise to do so, because, the Republicans will be in charge. So once Republicans get in charge, if there's no filibuster, if we've excused the filibuster for something like, their radical leftist voting legislation, or their radical leftist enshrining Roe legislation, right? There's no real limit on the filibuster, right? But that's not how the country was designed. That's not how the Constitution was set up. The Senate is supposed to put the brakes on stuff. It's supposed to be the cooling saucer. So, they can keep screaming at their computer screens, or they can get out and do some work. And I think they're going to scream their computer screens for a considerable while longer.
So, this thing with Manchin and Sinema is kind of fascinating, because they really have held pretty firm.
Right.
And, this has got to be frustrating the Democrats. I mean, does blame, is there blame to attach to Biden or to Schumer or these people like that for not being able to get that caucus over the finish line, to get those two to agree to things? Is it the policies of the Democrat this Biden administration policies that have led to this? Is it some other failure?
I mean, we run into the same thing. We have our Collins and Romney and Murkowski, So when we're talking about getting something over the finish line, I mean, we've got to get to 53. The real number is 53 for us, right? So theirs is 52. You got to get those two people on your side. So, they haven't done it. To me, it's like, Manchin, it's not hard to figure out. He's a coal guy. That's the business he's in. His family's been in. He's in a state that Trump won by 40 points. It's the most Republican state in the country right now. Sinema, that's a different story. Sinema really does. I mean, she has, crazy women chasing her in the bathroom to scream at her and all this kind of stuff. She endures a lot of abuse over this. So I didn't know what to make of her when she came to Congress. But, I remember thinking, there's a possibility there's something pretty substantive here. Just the first few times I heard her say things and so forth. And I'm like, she's kind of on the ball, and she's sort of willing to think for herself in a way that not a lot of these people are, especially early in their political careers, right? Like, Patty Murray has never moved past what she knew day one of when she entered the Senate, right? She's still the same old down the line, no original thinking liberal she ever was. So, but Sinema has moved forward, moved in a lot of directions, right? Sometimes she's hardcore on their side, right? But it shows that, like, she's thinking. She's not just pushing the buttons.
I wonder sometimes with her too whether or not she is, she's looking at the Senate race and trying to see which way the wind will blow. And then we'll look at the results. If Kelly wins re-election, would she then maybe be more willing to side with the Democrats? Because it says, well, maybe Arizona is a little bit more blue than I thought it was. But there's the Republicans are got a pretty big pit.
Before you move on that, what has Kelly done lately? He's moved away from the gun rhetoric and toward border rhetoric, right? So he's sort of listening to the music too.
Yeah, he's trying to position himself because right now I think Arizona, the Republicans are still trying to sort out who the best candidate really is for them, and I'm not that Spencer lives out there and he thinks it's kind of a mess on the Republican side right now, but it could turn out to be good for them. But if Kelly moves more towards the center, he makes himself much more palatable to the voters overall, and he could squeak by and win re-election there by just doing that. But sometimes it's interesting to watch politicians when they start moving their positions as they look at the electorate and they say, I better kind of go this way right now. If I convince enough people, I keep my job, and then I can go back and do whatever else, once I'm actually back in office again.
Right. And that looks like waffling, but that is kind of what we're supposed to do, right? Is you're supposed to know, like, in the general sense, the will of the people. Yeah, that's right. Republicans look to beat the thing. Democrats look to change the rules, right?
And he throws in a baseball reference.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. People to add a strike. Tell you what, Little League better not do that, man. If they add a strike, they will burn down America. That's not, no, 3 is enough. But seriously, that's true. What's their immediate thing? Oh, the rules aren't right. The people are not. The founders were out of touch. That's been gone too long. We need to change. It's like constant. The Washington Post wrote a thing like the founding, referring to the founding all the time is not serving us. Right. We need to get over reverence to the founders and the founding and the documents, right? We need to move past that. This is the 21st, whatever century it is now. So, and that's what they talk about, because they don't, they can't win like they are. They do not have right on their side. They do not have the people on their side, and they know that. And so it's like, change the rules. Rules aren't right. We can't get what we want. And that's not your basis for deciding if the rules work.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. So as we talk about things that are going on here electorally, politics, Monmouth poll came out and it was bad. This is, Biden continues to slip his favorability ratings, and what was it? 88%, 36% approval, but 88% of those polled are saying that the country is going in the wrong direction. Now, look, you pay more attention to a lot of polls than I do, but when I see a number like 88%, that to me is pretty stunning, because I don't recall numbers going that high for wrong direction polls. Once again, I could be wrong, but I mean that's a pretty. I mean, you don't have. There's not that much between 88% to 100%. You're
Right.
getting really close to basically everybody polled saying we're going in the wrong direction. This is
Yeah.
not good. This is not good for Biden. This is not good for the Democrats.
Right. And it's also it's up in it's up in the 90s among independents, right? So the only people you could really hope uh, uh, to persuade are persuaded against you. The other thing is like, gas prices have ticked down a little bit in the last few days. Inflation has slowed a little bit in the last few days. So like the impact, the impact of these things is starting to come down a little bit, but it's probably too late. I mean, the popular word on Biden is that he's failed, especially on the economy and energy as a president, right? And that can't be overcome by November in this case. So, I think that they're in for a huge whipping.
Yeah, I mean, Biden is just, here we're battling high gas prices, and we, like you said, they are dipping a little bit, but this is not because it's a Biden, jawboning effect or Biden policy effect.
Right.
I mean, he's still very hostile to the oil industry, right? I mean, he's doubling down on, kind of restricting and drilling on federal lands and things like that.
Right.
While at the other side,
So they've presented two plans when we talked about they weren't even going to start on the next offshore drilling plan until the last one ran out at the end of June, right? So there's no way to get a permit to drill offshore in the U.S. right now. You can't apply. There's no plan. There's no one to apply to. Okay, so they're slow walking the process because they don't really care how long it takes, because they're trying to get to their great transition to green energy, of which there is none. Or I don't say none, but very little. Okay, but they presented two plans, and one calls for some limited offshore drilling to be added in the Gulf of Mexico, and one of them calls for no new offshore drilling at all. So when the current lease is expired, that would be it. We would have no offshore drilling off the United States anywhere. So I mean, that's where they're going with this, and that's the plan that the Secretary of Interior is pushing, right? And they think they can get away with this. They think they can do this and without consequence, especially, because it looks like for a moment now that it has topped out. It won't get any worse temporarily. So, I mean, that's where they're going. We're going to have no offshore drilling. We're going to have, we're going to be so far from energy independence, that it's crazy, right? And it's one thing for Europe to do that because it's a lot of different customers and there's some willing sellers and so forth. But if we do that, you can really change the math of world geopolitics by cutting off the energy supply of one country, and that country is us. And we're positioning the rest of the world to be able to do this to us, to have effective veto power over our policies. It is completely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, wasn't it Jeff Bezos was one of, I think there was somebody else that criticized Biden. I mean, the White House has all these tweets out there, and it's just like, I think, didn't Bezos say something about that he needs an Econ 101, course or something like that,
Yeah.
or at least the intern that tweeted out. But I mean, that did that. But this has been a problem for the Biden administration, is that they put out these tweets about the economy, and they're completely tone deaf.
They're getting a reputation of saying things that, the economy is flowing like never before. It's burgeoning like never before, and all of America is reading that, going, "No, it's not." So when you're lying, that when we all look at you and see that you're lying, that's different. That's a problem for them.
Yeah, because the only thing they're hanging their hat on, because that's the only thing they can tout, is just that they have all the unemployment numbers that are reported by the government, that they're very low. But the problem there is that they continue to ignore the inflation and the gas prices that are stifling families, that are really where people are thinking about that. I mean, I think there was some survey that showed, like, the Democrats have been trying to play. We talked about this before too. I think that, in terms of they're hoping that the Roe v. Wade, stokes people, and gets people excited towards the election towards Democrats. But that's a base issue with a certain group of people. It's not the broad populace.
It doesn't move any votes.
It's at best it's like third on the list. It's gas prices and inflation. These types of things. Are much more in their mind. Yeah. Is inflation easing a little bit, or gas prices easing? Yeah. But the problem that the administration has is that it's not on their policy. It's not anything that they're doing. It's the fear of a recession that is doing this. Demand is going down for oil and gas right now because partly because of the price, but also people are saying, like, we're starting to see a slowdown. We're starting to see a slowdown in hiring and some other things going on there. So you go into
I think by the end of this month we will be officially in a recession, and according to how they keep those records,
right? Right. When they actually release the second quarter GDP, if it goes negative like the first quarter is, and then they could declare officially they've been there. No president wants to have any of that under their watch, because
negative economic growth, negative job growth. Remember, he pounced on Trump for the negative job growth. Trump had added millions of jobs before the pandemic. Of course, pandemic shut down things, and Democrats use that as an opportunity to keep things shut down and further destroy the economy. I hope they enjoy their efforts on that on November 9th.
Yeah, no, I mean, people
looking at the smoking wreckage.
people are getting squeezed. I mean, and gas prices definitely affect people at the lower end of the scale, probably more than the middle. But anybody who travels gets hit. I mean, I can tell you.
I was going to tell you. So on my trip last year, a tank of gas averaged $27. This year it averaged $62. I mean, that's that cuts off a lot of people what they're going to do. That route becomes smaller, or it doesn't happen at all. Instead of going away across the country to see grandma, we go, one state over and go to the campground or whatever. Right? It's changing what people do on all the levels. It's energy that's the thing to keep cheap. If energy prices stay low, your economy will not collapse. And they try and act like this was inexorable, and all Joe had to do was, it was going to happen whoever was president at that time. That's simply not true. This was his fault. These resulted from his policies.
Right, and the increase in gas prices was not all due to the war in Ukraine. That it had already been ticking up before it was really even hit the radar. And they hadn't really they weren't doing anything to work on that at all. Only when it started to push that $4, $4.50 level on the average, and it's like, it's almost like, oh, wait a minute, we've got a problem here. What are we going to do about this? At least right now, for the gas stations that were approaching $10 a gallon in California, they won't have to get new signage for a little while.
That's right.
Right.
Keep it down below 9.
I was waiting to see how that was going to work, but now I'll have to wait to see till another day. But it just shows the fragility of these things that you do have to watch out for this. And this administration does not seem capable of managing an economy.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of quotes out there. I guess there was an Axios piece in the last few days. There's a lot of anonymous Democrats saying they have no plan, they have no depth, they have a bunch of idealistic little kids down there who don't understand what they're doing, right? And like, where are the answers? What are we doing here? So the thing about it is that what the world is waking up to is that the green energy mirage is too expensive, right? We are not ready for it. We cannot produce or store renewable energy in sufficient quantities to meet our demands, home or travel, right? And we're racing to knock out reliable sources in favor of sources that cannot meet our needs. They're reliably unreliable, right? So you saw Germany refired up a bunch of coal plants in the last few days. Europe is coal is moving through Europe now at a rate not seen in a long time, because we can't do natural gas. We can't do, oil, those things are dirty. We don't want it. Okay. Now you're very cold and you can barely move because, you chose something that you couldn't afford.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just it's like the Democrats. I mean, when they won the White House, when Biden came in, is that I'm going to give my agenda largely over to the AOC, left wing greenies, and all this. It was popular for that left wing, that part of the party, but it wasn't practical,
Right.
And every time,
They don't care about consequences. They're like, we
yeah,
could just do this. It'll just happen. It won't just happen. And we can't really blame AOC either. I mean, he campaigned on, we're going to take it all out, right? That's
right.
famous speech he gave in that debate where, no more fossil fuels, no more. We're taking it all out. So, this was his dream. This is something that he saw himself as elected president to do. And it has been a massive failure and threatens our national security. And people are stepping in to stop it now. They're like, Joe, you're too nuts about green energy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of things that I keep hearing now too, about all these charging stations. I mean, there's still, this whole idea of getting all these nationwide charging stations, and you know,
You
so,
see
so-
the picture, somebody in California, like there's these people, 4th of July weekend, they're all trying to get where they're getting. And I think it takes like 30 or 40 minutes a car. And there was a line somewhere that was, 15, 20 cars. So you're waiting, that's 7 or 8 hours. You're sitting at a thing waiting to fill up, right? Like fill up is a 3-minute process. Put your little card in there and move on. If you use gas, if you choose to use electricity, it is a much darker situation now.
yeah, I mean, one of the problems, with these charging stations is that, so Tesla does theirs differently. Tesla has their own bank of charging
Yeah,
stations, and they only work with Tesla. That's an exclusive thing.
right.
You could, and you if you own a Tesla, you're driving along, you know exactly where those charging stations are, so you know where to go ahead and juice back up again. And I saw that there was something now, in terms of this, is that one of the rules that's being proposed in this is just that, there cannot be any more exclusivity like Tesla has. You have to actually have an adapter and make it universal.
So change the rules when something doesn't work.
Right. And here, but to me, part of this is that part of the problem with these charging stations is that there are a lot of private companies that have sprung up to provide them. So there, you pop up in a shopping mall, or I know there's the giant, grocery store down the street's got 2 or 3 of them in their parking lot,
Yep.
and I see them used periodically and all that. But they have got to be able to get enough demand in there to be able to pay for the cost of running that thing and maintaining it. So one of the issues that has arisen is that because there has been little revenue generated to date, because there's so few EVs on the road in general, that if something goes wrong with the charging station, there's not a lot of incentive for them to go and spend the money to fix it, creating a whole nother wave of problems. So you may look like you've got 3 there, but maybe you've only got 1 working. But but it doesn't make, if they're not making enough money off of the thing, they're just not going to be incentivized to repair it. Tesla has an interest. They've got their Tesla, they've got their whole ecosystem, right? It's built around that whole thing. And so,
Yeah.
if you're a Tesla owner, you've got charging stations that are exclusive to you and things like this. But as you say, change the rules. The liberals want to come in there and force Elon Musk to say, open your system up to everybody else. Why should he have to do that?
Right.
And
why don't you build another car that uses all charging stations and advertise against it? What happened to that? Say, hey, you can charge our car anywhere. You don't have to find the perfect Tesla place, right? Wouldn't that be a selling point? Can't we just go back to competing and being free enterprise and all that?
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about,
They don't want to compete. That's one of the
right.
things. You think about the left, they don't want to compete. They want it all given to them up front, right? And all these cases that have come up, right? These are competing ideas, competing rights. That's why the Supreme Court takes cases, right? Because, side A has a right to this, side B has a right to that. How do we manage these rights? They don't want that. They don't want that balancing. They want, give me all mine and, declare it so that the other side can't do it. And if they oppose it, squash their communications, silence them, censor them, right? Don't let them speak, right? That's a big part of what's going on here is, they're starting to, the J6 committee and all this stuff, they're starting to criminalize dissent, right? If you thought the election was was rigged, right, then you should be banished or jailed, right? And you get to think whatever you want about the election, right? There's people, the people that thought 2016 was rigged, right? You're free to think it. Sure, Hillary Clinton's free to say it as many times as she wants, right? They don't want you to be able to say it. They want to change the rules on you.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's very true. I want to throw one more thing on the EVs that when I was listening to this car guy the other day on this tech podcast, I think he was trying to say this without saying it in some ways, in terms of the benefits of the EVs has really gone to the upper income people, right? Because the EVs, the government set this policy of that there's a $7,500 tax credit for the first 200,000 cars of a model that every manufacturer sells. But he was even saying that, when you look at it, it's like, who's been buying those cars? It tends to be the people who've got the money, a decent amount. So it's kind of like the wealthier are getting the tax credits, which is not really what it was meant for. This guy's even basically saying, I think that, in the future, for EVs, they may actually have to have an income limit, on purchasers to qualify for the tax credit, because it's like, if all these upper income people race to buy every EV, the Mach-E, whatever these manufacturers come up with, and they keep scooping up all the tax credits, is like, then the car is fully priced and there's no tax credit for the average Joe that decides I want to replace my combustion engine car with something, but there's no, he now has got to pay the full price. He doesn't get the $7,500 credit, which would make it more affordable for him. It's not for a lot of EV buyers. The $7,500 tax credit is like icing on the cake, but it doesn't necessarily mean, for Tesla owners, that's, they want the newest toy. They love that car. They are a cult, in a lot of ways.
Right. But if you take it away, right, you still need those people to buy the cars, right?
Right. Well, look, I mean, the EV, all of this stuff, and I've said this many times, which is whether or not it's solar panels, it's the EV, all this stuff is built on tax credits. If you and me, if we were not giving the money back to these people to buy this and incentivized to buy it, these industries just wouldn't exist to the extent they do today. Right. That has done this, but it's created, this whole system.
If you look at all the tax credits on the planet, especially in the United States, right? What percentage of them do you think do not go to the top 2% of income, right? Yeah. Very, very few, right? Because you're talking about, you're incentivizing big behaviors, the purchase of a $60,000 car, whether a building gets greened, right? The average guy on the street, he doesn't have a building to green. He has his house, right? So, you're always, when you start down that road, you got to remember, step one, shovel money to rich people, right? That's the first step of all these incentive programs. That's another good reason to not have them.
Yeah. I mean, do you foresee any way that the government can actually get out of the, out of the tax credit business for EVs, right? I mean, after all these years, I mean, I think they're stuck that, the manufacturers, that's one of the reasons they race to this, is that not only do they look politically correct, they also have that benefit of that. They know the first 200,000 cars will probably sell pretty fast because that tax credit's dangling out there. If that wasn't there, it would be much harder to sell those EVs because the price of those EVs is pretty up there, and is getting higher because the material costs are soaring through the roof.
Right. Plus, look what you have to mine, what the damage you have to do to the earth to produce those huge batteries. And we don't, you're talking about, they talk about peak oil and all this stuff. Like peak oil was first predicted to occur in the early 70s. So we've obviously got a lot more access to a lot more oil now than we even knew about in the 1970s, right? So peak oil is proven to be largely a myth, but peak battery is real, right? There's only so much, rare earth minerals, which is what you have to make batteries, right? And they're very hard to mine and very hard on the areas that mine them and the people who do the work, right?
Right. It is not an environmentally friendly mining process.
No, it's way worse than oil. Just deal with oil.
But that, and that's kind of that whole inconvenient truth thing, right? I mean, these
Yeah.
are the things that the liberals, the left ignores. They don't want to talk about any of the realities of that as to how
Right.
places. Because every time,
Or we're about a month from being 8 years of no warming.
yeah,
Right? What are we doing this for? Earth's not burning up. Right? The threat's not there. The poles aren't going ice free. It's nonsense, right? We have the coolest June in the U.S. in 22 years this year. Like, what are we doing? We are paying for something that not only do we not need, but that doesn't really even exist.
yeah. I mean, I was bracing for 90 to 100-degree temperatures, some strings in June, and we didn't get that.
There's
We
no
got a
yet.
few 90s, but we've had a lot of 80s. We've had some 70. So it has been below. I know I saw a figure the other day. I guess it was a little over a week ago before the month closed or whatever, and it was down. It wasn't down by a ton, but temperature doesn't have to be down by a ton. But yeah, we've known, and I'm thinking like, yeah, I'm not running my air conditioner as much as I thought I might, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
And July so far, I mean, has been pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, for
I saw Howie
heaven's sake,
Bernstein tweeted while I was out of town. The weatherman tweeted that I guess he lives up by Little Bennett up in northern Montgomery County. He was saying he was out and, he had to put a sweater on to go for his morning walk. I mean, in July, that's pretty,
yeah.
that's
Yeah, I
not
mean,
something that we have to change policy over.
Yeah, because I'm going to the gym at 4:30 in the morning, 5 days a week. So one of the first things I do is I'd always double check the temperature to see where we are. Sometimes you wake up and it's like 58 degrees, and you're like, "Whoa, that's pretty. That seems awfully cool for this time of the year." I mean, it's been a little warmer lately, but I thought July 4th was extremely mild. I was expecting a lot more heat and humidity, and like, you could go out and watch. I think you could go out and watch the fireworks on July 4th and feel relatively comfortable, which is not usually the case in a lot of times. So yeah, we've definitely seen a big change in there. I just want to get your comments here on Kamala Harris. Is she the word salad queen or what? I don't understand these public statements. It's like the circular thing. It makes no sense. I don't understand. What is that? I thought that she would be better than this. At least, I don't know. Maybe
I think the Democrats did too. They saw her like she was so animated during the Kavanaugh hearings. They're like, man, she'll just go around, throwing thunderbolts at the Republicans and they'll just quake in their shoes because you really can't go against the first Black woman vice president, right? And that'll put them in one political dilemma after the other, right? But what has happened is she refuses to do the work. She refuses to prepare. She doesn't have remarks. She doesn't go over what she's supposed to say. She doesn't find the facts. So when you're up there, when you're having to BS your way through everything, every single time you give remarks at something, then yeah, some word salad is going to come out because you don't really know what to say. They hand it to her. That's why part of why all these people have worked for her have quit, because they try to prepare her and she will not do it. She won't read the materials. She won't learn who the people are, and she won't use prepared remarks, right? So, I mean, if she's not going to prepare, I mean, A, she's telling you why she should never, ever be within 1,000,000 miles of being president. And B, she's telling you that, these are the kind of, this was exactly what we said it was, which was an affirmative action hire. This is not someone who was capable of doing the job, who was chosen for her capabilities. She was chosen because she checked the boxes, the affirmative action boxes.
Yeah, I mean, you think that the Kavanaugh hearings, national stage, that was I mean, her debates were they're okay. I mean, they weren't stellar, but I mean, she had some moments during
She
the
had a
debate.
moment. She went after Biden about busing, right?
Yeah, she did. She had her moments, but her performance as VP and these statements lately, it's just like what a bunch of gibberish and everything like this. Also, I just want to. Did you see that thing about where she was with this thing the other day, and the backdrop is that they left out in Louisiana.
Yeah, she was at the Essence Festival. They called it Louisiana, and my cousin was all upset about it. I'm like, that's how we say it.
I know,
in all fairness,
but it's there in big letters. I mean,
there in big letters. How do you put that up there? And who was first to notice, right? I mean, obviously the people proofing the thing, hey, it looks fine to me, right? Wait a minute, there's a letter missing, right? I'd like to think I would have caught the letter missing,
Yeah.
right? Having seen that word about so many times. And when I looked at it, they're like, what's wrong with this picture? And I mean, they misspelled Louisiana, right? So it did like jump right out. Now I'm an editor, so I may see these things quicker than other people do. It's the kind of thing I'm in tune to. But that's ridiculous, right? That's a big New Orleans thing, right? Essence Festival is a big deal in New Orleans, and what a just terrible mistake.
That was terrible. I don't know if you saw the news report about those climate protesters blocking the Beltway the other day. I was encouraged to say, because the first report that I saw was from WTOP, and they had gotten a listener, had actually videoed, had filmed it and then sent it to them. So there wasn't any real context, but you saw these people sitting on the Beltway, right, with police around them and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, is this a Roe v. Wade thing because we're come off of this? But it turned out to be, it was climate policies. I mean, they were, I guess, protesting the administration's climate policies. But on the Beltway, I mean, are you insane?
Hey, you know what? I think no police protection. Take your chances. You think you can block a major highway for your stupid political views? You get what you get.
That was one of the things that, I mean, my initial reaction too is with that is just that, okay, wait a minute. As soon as they get out there, the cops are going to be out there and they got to take them out. I mean, they can't let them sit there and block traffic.
Right.
Come on. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You cannot do that on the Beltway. I mean, if you're not getting your point across either when you're blocking Beltway traffic. You're angering a lot of people.
Yeah, you're making people despise you.
Yeah, right? I think that only hurts your effort and whatnot. All right, last word.
Last word. Let's see. There's a couple of things in here we want to cover. It is interesting to me that they have canceled Bette Midler, who appears not have noticed what she said, and Macy Gray over the increasing cleavage in the gay community between the transgender and gay people, right? Transgender is not really gay. It's really kind of its own thing.
Right.
And so they've been lumped in, but it's like, I see a lot of gay people talking about, like on Twitter and so forth, saying, I'm for being gay, and I don't, we shouldn't be discriminated against, but neither should we be twerking in kindergarten class, right? And that's not what we're supporting, right? Let kids be innocent, leave them alone. I saw the thing about GW dropping the Colonials. The school I coach is Thomas Jefferson Colonials, and I'm wondering how long all that stands, right? I got my Colonial shirts, and I'm like, this may go into the old dustbin of history. It'd be interesting how to show out. And finally, one of the coolest things I did on vacation was I went to see the Shreveport Mavericks play. They're in something called the Basketball League. They were in the championship series. It's a 44-team nationwide tournament, and it's former college players. They have pro coaches. It's pro scheme. They have 24-second shot clock, 12-minute. It's played all according to NBA rules, and it's good high-level basketball. There were, most of the players there were either major college or mid-major players for both teams. And they are in the championship series. They won their first game, the game we went to Saturday night in Shreveport. And now the last two, they have to win one of two in Albany, New York. So they had to fly all these people to Albany, New York for this game. They play tomorrow night and they play Thursday night, and Shreveport wins either game. It wins the basketball league. So it was a pretty cool thing, like pro basketball, big rowdy crowd there in Shreveport and so forth. It's kind of thing that bring a town together. So I was happy for it.
All right. Yeah. On that whole Macy Gray, Bette Midler thing. I mean, it's just like, I watched that Macy Gray clip on with Piers Morgan, and, she's talking about, she reiterates her support for the LGBTQI plus whatever they're calling themselves community, but she's just like, you change your parts does not make you a woman, and right. That, and this is the thing. They want this inclusion, this acceptance that, when we have the sex change operation, we are who we are, who we identify as. I mean, Piers Morgan says, look, you can identify as whoever you want to be. And then Macy Gray saying, yeah, but that doesn't make you that person. That doesn't make you that
Right.
type of an individual. So it's just, yeah. But boy, I mean, you start crossing this community and they come at you with a vengeance. It's interesting to watch liberals like that when they get kind of canceled by their own people like that. They're like, I'm just speaking the truth, and then all of a sudden these people just come pounding down on me and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, with that on sports, welcome to the Big Ten, UCLA and USC.
Right. Another major
Pac-12. I just like,
yeah. You know what? On that, I'm glad you brought that up. So what happened there is the Pac-12. They're so convinced that they're right about everything and everybody else is wrong that when the other conferences got with it and creating their own networks and taking their own programs to the whole nation, they didn't. They sort of just said, oh, we're fine over here on our side of the Rockies, and we don't need all that, right? That's the people like Seattle, they have the people for more important things, right? So hey, we don't admitting that we like sports and want to watch it is that's not day class A or whatever. So they didn't. They sat smugly on their side of the Rockies, and now these moves they seem shocking now, but they're quite logical. Like there's a lot more money in playing on TV and having people know who you are and what you're doing instead of the occasional 10:30 at night ESPN thing, right? People are done watching college football at that point. You're on the bars, but nobody can hear you, right? So they've made some moves to get over the Rocky Mountains, and now there will be a lot of moves, and there will be no Pac-12 conference probably in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Right.
One of the sad things about it, if you look up football and basketball, the most commonly played games, like the two opponents who have played the most times, like 8 of the 10 on both lists are Pac-12 schools, like Oregon, Washington State, Washington, right? Those schools have always been in the same league. They've always played each other. Stanford is in some of these, right? They've always played Cal and the Washington and Oregon schools, right? And now that's all going to get splintered because they were so smart that they couldn't give in to the evils of the SEC network and the Big Ten network. Now they have nothing.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I was ASC, I'd be howling mad at this and saying like, this is environmentally unfriendly. It's going to require all this cross country travel and everything like this. It's like go at it from a green perspective. But yeah, I mean, look,
Rutgers USC is now a conference game. Think about that.
Is that insane or what?
Yeah.
I mean, we're just seeing how this is all changing right before our eyes. And I was not a big fan of Maryland leaving the ACC for the Big Ten. But it's this, I mean, the dollars are there, and the Big Ten generates a lot of money. And if you're USC or UCLA, you're like, there's a heck of a lot more money by playing in the Big Ten because the Big Ten has built this network, and they have got this loyalty factor in there. And it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out because we are going to see a lot more changes, along in this landscape and everything like that.
That's
but
right.
Yeah, the idea of having these really regionalized conferences it doesn't exist anymore. I mean,
I'm hoping that the practicality of it will be proved to be a market force, right?
Yeah.
That people will start realizing really can't, you have Thursday and Saturday conference games. So, think about this. Maryland goes out and plays them both, right? They go to Los Angeles, they play UCLA on Saturday or Thursday and USC on Saturday. Okay. So when do you leave for that? You leave probably Tuesday, right? And you get home probably Sunday night, right? Because you can't really fly out after it, right? So, I mean, they're gone most of the week to play 2 conference games. So, I mean, the whole point of conferences was, regional competition. So I'm anxious to see what the market forces do on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, USC and UCLA, they can play each other in the Big Ten. But I'm sorry, it doesn't have the same feeling as them playing in the Pac-12.
Right.
There's so much history in the Pac-12 that the two of them playing in the Big Ten against each other doesn't feel the same anymore.
Yeah, Rose Bowl guy. He's
yeah, I know exactly right. It's like Rose Bowl is like, what am I?
Yeah, what do we do?
What just happened?
That's right.
No. Anyway, all right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Remember, please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. We just celebrated yet another birthday. Hooray, hooray.
Hooray,
And
hooray.
as always, God bless America. And we will see you again with another exciting show next week. Stay safe. See you around.